We're super thrilled to have you here at our new office and like break it in and get every penny out of the office that we're paying. Like obviously you can see like a lot of money for, but also we wanted to get everyone together that is in sales or passionate about sales. And obviously this is slanted a little bit more towards SDRs for tonight, but there's a lot of other really good tidbits that you're gonna get. And we wanna keep it informal. We've got a good mix here, everything from sales management to SDRs and in between. So I think it's gonna be a good conversation, and we wanna have a lot more of these. So, you know, hopefully, well, I know the first one's gonna go well. So thank you guys, thank you guys for coming. And like I said, let's keep it interactive and feel free to ask questions. We'll go over the agenda in a minute, but Morgan's here with me from Iron.io, which is awesome. Morgan's actually the reason that I'm working at Rainforest. He recommended that I speak to the founders a year and a bit ago. So Morgan and I go way back, and both cool venture-backed startups.
A match made in heaven, by the way.
So wonderful to be on another one of these with you. A little bit of background about Rainforest, and actually let's take a look at the first slide. We'll just kind of cue things up here. So I always like to say why we love SDRs, and I personally am a big fan of SDRing in the context of Rainforest and where we've come from. That lovely kind of hockey stick looking thing was last year, basically. So that was a good year, you could say, one may say. And there's a lot of things that we did to get from basically, call it like 400K to like 2.5 million, which is like about 900% growth, which is really, really good. A lot of things happened that were right, some happened that were wrong, but one of the right things that we did was made a very deliberate choice to hire 2 SDRs after I was here for about 2 or 3 months, so that was about June timeframe. And then we hired 2 more closer towards beginning of Q4. And when I started, it was 100% inbound. By the time the year ended last year, about half of our business that we were closing, which was definitely not trivial, was coming from outbound. So from having 0 outbound in June to 50% of our business being closed from outbound, that's why I love SDRs, if I could put it that way. We can definitely revisit that, but I know Morgan also has a pretty cool story when it comes to SDRs and SDRing, and we could hear the iron piece as well.
Yeah, I guess I didn't use an adjective as strong as love, but I'll tell you, Chris, I do love you. I love the SDRs. For me, the high-level bullets on the SDRs, we have a model that is more inbound driven, and represented by 90% of the opportunities right now come specifically from inbound SDRs. And the last 10% are really direct network referrals or referrals from our VCs or just from people within our network. But my SDR manager, Chris Burgess, who's here, will tell you kind of a little bit of an interesting wrinkle about how we actually have our SDRs out in the world kind of developing their own network of interacting with key decision makers out in the field. So we'll talk a little bit about that. SDRs are important because for a lot of customers, they're the first human interaction that in our case, an engineer developer has with your product. And I believe in the startup world especially, that's extremely important because one of our major competitors is kind of an Amazon-ish do-it-yourself kind of solution. And in those cases, there are no humans. There are no people to interact with. And I really feel that one of our core strengths at Iron.io is our human touch and the fact that we really go out of our way to take care of our clients because each one matters. So the SDRs are like the ambassadors of that first interaction. That's extremely important for me. Second, one of the advantages that we'll talk about more has to do with SDRs, the importance of SDRs at smaller companies like Iron.io, I think like Rainforest. They really touch a lot of vital aspects within the company. So my little shorthand there, those those brackets kind of mean interaction between. So at our company, sales is the kind of the continuous feedback loop lifeline for product. And product is a direct contributor to the engineering that drives our product, that drives our offering, right? So if at a small company, that's a really short cycle. It's really fast. And the SDRs are literally helping us create the product that we're going to be out there selling.
So that's a good point, right? Like, so we're not saying rah, startups are the best in the world, but there's like, to work for a startup, there are some interesting advantages, right? To work for a larger company, there are also some definitely interesting advantages. And it's a very well-made point in terms of the life cycle of product development, and things move so fast and it's so small in a startup that an SDR really can have an impact in some ways or feedback on the product roadmap, right? With that input and what they're hearing on the front lines. It's just a lot harder as a company of 1,000 employees and 200 on the sales team. So there are certain inherent, which we're biased towards both at startups, but you can really, as an SDR, at a startup, you can really make a significant impact. And that's why I wanted to show that up and to the right chart. We would not have done that. That would not have been a reality. We would have flatlined from inbound. We invested in inbound too, but we would have flatlined from inbound and we wouldn't have had that growth curve, right? So it was outbound that was able to add that rocket fuel or turbocharge our sales, if you will. We had to throw some salesy words in there. Turbocharge your career. So anyways, yeah, working for a startup, there are inherent advantages. And that's cool. So you went from 0 to 5 SDRs in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, so when I came into the company, there was kind of one pseudo SDR, but what I needed to do was to just kind of take over the whole process and add some organization behind all the leads that were flooding in.
Yep.
And in order to scale, what really became readily apparent is that needed a team, right?
Cool.
I mean, that was always the plan. It was always the plan to have SDRs working in conjunction with AEs, who work in conjunction with SEs and CSMs.
Cool.
But hiring great people like Chris Burgess, who now runs our
Great.
team.
And we're going to hear from him in a little bit?
You'll be hearing from him later.
Cool. So SDRing, why is it important? I think to enter sales and to start your career in sales as an SDR is of vital importance. I think if you're transitioning from, say being a lawyer to like, I want to get into sales, an SDR is also a great way to start. And then if you're selling an other product in an other vertical or an other industry, it's also really good. We can get into it later, but it's very difficult to make that leap from selling something to selling something else. And I've seen, we can talk about it later, I've seen some SDRs start who could have made a real case to sell and to close right away, who came in and did it the right way and ramped up and have done very, very well. So I think SDRing is really important. I had one SDR at Upsite, so the gig before this, who came in who was just passed his bar exam for the California state, like to be a lawyer, and he was like, yeah, I want to be an SDR, I want to get into sales, and I want to be a lawyer. I was like, wow, like that's a gutsy move. Within 2 years, he was VP of sales at a venture-backed startup, which is crazy. So there's your okay, and no bullshit. You can go check out Raphael at segment.io. He leads their sales team there. He was on my team, I don't know, like 2.5 years ago or so. But he was brilliant. He's a brilliant guy too, right? But he did it the right way. He approached it the right way, very smart, and he put the hard work in, right? And we can talk about that a little bit later too. Yeah.
Were you ever an SDR?
Great first question from the audience, may or may not have been planted. But it's good. We got to get some interaction going here. But yeah, I was. So I actually I did two fun things when I got out of school. I was a bill. I was like a bad debts collector or debt collector. So you want to talk about being an SDR? That's easy. If you're trying to get money from somebody that doesn't have any money and already had the product and already used the product and doesn't want to talk to you, that's a whole other thing. And then I was also an SDR doing 125 cold calls. Yep, we were doing cold calls back in the day. And my lead list was, I'd go on the interweb, and at that time it was a very new thing, dating myself a bit, and I'd print off like Miami, used computer parts, yellow pages, and I'd just like dial through that the whole day. You know, and I'd do like 10 demos a day, and 4 of them would be conversations, and 1 of them would close, and it was just a game of numbers. And it was like awesome.
So we're supposed to both answer those, right? So for me, I'm similar to Farland. Again, we're dating ourselves here. I was an SDR before there was an SDR, I guess. My first sales role, I graduated, I guess, in what was a recession considered at the time. So I didn't know I was going to be in sales. My first role was 100% commission, no salary. 100% commission, same thing, Smile Dial, selling federal marketplace tools, and once you could do that, you're hooked. Yeah. But it was a numbers game. In essence, had they had the foresight to have separate SDR and closing roles, that would have been very efficient. But I think similar to Farland, I had to do it all myself. And 100% commission. Anytime you guys are worried about your role or sad or upset or think you're not getting enough money, 100% commission. Just remember that. That's no fun.
Risk reward, though.
I have no feeling like closing a few good deals. Yeah.
I think it's a good thing. I actually might talk to a few of the folks on the team after.
Yeah, there you go.
It's a pretty good idea.
So you and I
think
we both have the background then. We both kind of been there. But I think it's cool that it exists as a separate function today.
Sales is a very non-intuitive thing. If you break down what happens in a sales cycle and what it actually takes to get somebody that doesn't know about your product to them like opening their wallet and giving you $100,000 or hopefully 200,000, it's a very unnatural thing. It's a very counterintuitive process in some ways. So to see it on the front lines as an SDR and to see the numbers and the dials and the emails and the activity and the momentum and how that kind of like comes out the other end in terms of like SQOs and pipeline and closed deals, it's really cool to see how that kind of works. Good anecdote. SDR to AE.
Perfect. So one of the things that I wanted to build upon really quickly was I think that there's some great companies and great SDRs here in the audience. Congratulations, Sarah and everybody. So we have people from GitHub, Twilio, some really great companies here. And one of the things that actually I took out of this slide when I was talking to those people, the SDR role is a great role to really understand how a company works, especially at smaller places, especially smaller places like Iron and Rainforest. And I can honestly say, Chris will dive a little bit deeper into it from our point of view, and I'm sure that Farland's folks will as well. But you get to see a lot of how the organization actually works. Okay, so you are so much closer to that feedback loop I was talking about before. And in our particular case, my SDRs sit in on our weekly sales meeting, so they get to see really the cadences of how being an AE works, not just from the initial point where they're handing deals off, but all the way through to they get to hear about strategies about how things are going to close, negotiation strategies, what types of ops are closing with more frequency than other types, and all the way through full attribution cycle, right? Which is pretty unique. Sometimes at larger companies, that's not something that you can experience. And then in terms of specifically the relationship from SDR to AE, I'm going to let Farland cover a lot of that because I know he's had a lot of success in moving SDRs to AE.
We've had some good success so far in terms of having we hired 4 SDRs last year, and I'll bring you up to speed in a minute with where they are. You're going to get to meet a couple of them, 3 of them tonight. So let me talk about the criteria. I'll cut to the chase. I'll tell you how do you become an account exec. So it's going to be different at certain companies, but in most startups, it should be as follows. You learn the pitch, you learn the demo, and the product, you learn the objections, and then this is really important. So that's the first kind of like piece. And then you have the wherewithal to close a deal. And so what the wherewithal to close a deal really speaks to is like, what is the process to sell? What do you do at each stage? And how is that mirrored in Salesforce? And different companies will have different systems, as I call it, and we have a system here. We have a system at Iron in order to get a deal from interest to happy customer land, basically, right? So that's it. Those are the two tracks. It's that easy, as the SDRs here can attest to, right? But it's a very straightforward thing, but there's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot that's developed as you do the really important work of SDRing, like a discovery call. So somebody's interested, you could just hand that off to an AE right away, or you get to a point where it's like, all right, I'm gonna get on the phone and I'm actually gonna figure out what's this customer all about? Where are they at in the buying cycle? What do they know about our company? How good of a fit are they? And an SDR can get on the phone and actually just qualify that. And so as you do these activities to get to that point where you're actually closing, that's what being an SDR is all about. In the four SDRs that we hired last year, 3 are account execs now. One was promoted as account exec as early as December of last year, closed a couple $100,000 in ARR. Don't let your heads get this too big, guys. One was promoted in Q1. He was, I want to say, our #1 performing rep in Q1 of 5 account execs, which was pretty good, which is actually pretty amazing. Again, don't get a big head. And then another was promoted, and he's promoted in Q2, and he's already got a couple $100,000 on the board or close to it. So like really good. And then the 4th one is the SDR manager, Jake, who you're going to meet in a minute. So it's obviously a wonderful thing when we can make that happen. And they're smart guys too. So I want to see somebody who intuitively understands the product and what we're talking about and can have a real conversation about the product. And that's what it takes. That's what it takes to get on the phone and to actually have a conversation with a customer and figure out where they're at. So that's a big one. But it's like, has this person done the homework and gone after it? Because SDR to AE is not going to happen with somebody who's at their desk and waiting for someone to come to them to say, all right, here's what we do next. That's a synonymous in the startup world thing from what I've seen. So I would say goes after it, figures out what they need to do, emulates success, and it really has a very intuitive understanding of what we're actually doing, what we're actually selling.
Yeah, so for me personally, I really think that the SDR role is a great place to do wide and deep kind of organizational scouting. So for example, the picture that I had up where you are touching so many different parts of an organization, that's really true, especially at smaller companies. So you can understand what part might be the best fit for your skill set and vice versa. You get exposed to management levels in a bunch of different departments. And for example, when startups get larger, like my previous startup at Council, the best SDRs often don't necessarily stay in sales, or they move into sales ops, or they move into success, which for us is sales, or somewhere else within the organization. So that's a long way of saying yes.
Yes. So by the way, if you can do it as an SDR, if you can make that work, you can do a lot of other things in the organization. Most of the time, and I think understanding the value prop and really viscerally understanding like why customers are talking to you, what customers are interested in, and to have that frontline approach or to have that frontline experience is also very, very helpful. Dependent, on. And you can go into a bunch of other things in the company, customer success as well. I haven't firsthand seen a bunch of folks transition from SDR to other areas of the company, but I think it's definitely possible if that's what you want to do.